On Christmas Eve, my son said, "There's no room for you this year." So I gave my $2, one house to the church. They're still wondering why the locks changed. I did not hear the bread hit the floor. What I felt was much louder than sound. It hit my chest before I realized it had left her hand, a dense, still warm loaf of sourdough I had baked with my own 2 hands that morning. She threw it at me like I was a rodent in her pantry. Vanessa stood across the kitchen, eyes blazing. "This is my kitchen. You do not get to poison my family again," she shouted. The world slowed. The air thickened. I looked down at the shattered bread at my feet, then up at my grandson Ethan, standing behind her, mouth slightly open. His small fingers clutched the edge of the marble counter. His eyes darted between the 3 of us, me, his mother, and his father. Michael stood by the fridge, arms crossed, jaw clenched. He did not move, not toward me, not away. Just stared. "Michael," I said softly, still brushing crumbs off my sweater. "I only made it for Ethan. He was coughing all night." I thought, "Are you stealing again, Mom?" Vanessa snapped, stepping closer. Her voice was sharp enough to draw blood. My lips parted, but no words came. The last time someone said that to me, I was 24 and standing in a police station, trying to explain why I took a loaf of bread to feed a starving child. Michael exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "This is my house, my kitchen. Do not touch anything." Vanessa folded her arms, smirking. "You know her record. Once a thief, always a thief." I stood in silence, not because I had no defense, but because I finally realized they were not just angry, they were ashamed of me. Ethan tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mom, is Grandma not family?" Vanessa crouched down, smoothing his hair. "No, sweetie. She is just staying here, like a guest." "A guest." Michael looked at me. His voice was even, like he had rehearsed it in his mind long before. "You are not family anymore, Mom. You are just someone staying in a room." I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I knew this moment had been coming for years. My hands were still sticky with bread dough and shame, and yet, somehow, I felt clean for the first time in a long time. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. That night, I did not cry. I did not pack. I did not scream. I washed my hands. I wiped the counter. I looked out the kitchen window at the fading sun melting over the edge of the neighbor's fence and remembered the first time I brought Michael home from the hospital. He was wrapped in a blue blanket. His eyes looked just like mine. That child needed me once. Now he needed me gone. I went upstairs to my room, the guest room as Vanessa often reminded me, and closed the door quietly. On the nightstand was a small ceramic figure Ethan made me in preschool, a heart-shaped frame with his face glued inside. He had written, "I love Grandma," in bright purple crayon across the top. That was only 3 years ago. I held it in my hands, gently, turned it over, studied the curve of his smile. Downstairs, I could hear them preparing dinner for the real family. There would be candles, wine, imported truffle butter, the sound of my bread being swept into the trash. I sat in silence. But my mind wasn't quiet. It began replaying every time I was erased. Muted, moved to the edge. The Thanksgiving I was told to eat early in the kitchen because Vanessa's friends were not comfortable around older energy. The birthday where they forgot to invite me but posted photos on Facebook from a restaurant I used to save. Coupons to visit. The conversation I overheard where Michael said, "I had to let her stay. She's got nowhere else to go. It's charity, really." I had not raised my son to be cruel, but I had raised him in silence, and that silence had become a blanket he used to smother me. That night, I did not sleep. Instead, I wrote. I wrote a letter to someone I had not spoken to in over 15 years. Daniel Whitmore. He was once just a name on an envelope, an attorney who came into my store when I still ran my little corner market, asking if I had Tylenol for his sick wife. I did not, but I gave him 2 from my purse and drove him to the pharmacy myself. His wife recovered. He never forgot. Now, I needed him to remember me again. At sunrise, I folded the letter and placed it inside an envelope, sealing it with the only thing I still had, my full name. Elena M. Morales. The woman they forgot, the thief they never forgave, the mother they discarded, the one who still owned the deed. I went downstairs to make coffee. The house was quiet. I passed the trash can and noticed the bread I made was gone, taken out already, like it had never existed. But I had. And they were about to remember that. I remembered the papers hidden in the shed, the deed still in my name. I was not always forgotten. In 1971, I stepped off a bus in El Paso, Texas, with a suitcase full of linens and a folded note in my pocket with one name, Maria Delgado. She was a friend of a friend, someone who promised a floor to sleep on until I could find work. I was 24, alone, 6 months pregnant with Michael, and I believed in the promise of America the way a child believes in stars, naive, blind, and completely. I worked that same week, cleaning houses, folding laundry, scrubbing floors so spotless the rich women I worked for could see their reflections while looking down at me. I did not mind. I had arms, I had legs. I had a baby coming who would one day grow up with more. At night, I slept on the floor with one hand on my belly and the other wrapped around my purse, just in case. I lived that way for 2 years. Michael was born in a clinic that only asked for my name and blood type. I gave them both and offered to mop their floors in return. I remember the winter of 1974. It was bitter. We had no heat. Michael had a fever that made him cry through the night. I had $3 and no bread. That morning, I walked to a bakery 3 blocks down, waited until the crowd cleared, and took one loaf from the crate sitting outside the back door. They called it theft. I called it breakfast for my son. They put handcuffs on me while he sat on the curb in his tiny coat. He was too young to understand why the police yelled at me, why I cried, why I kept whispering, "It's okay, it's okay." Like a prayer I no longer believed. I spent one night in holding. The charge stayed on my record for life. But so did the memory of a child who did not go hungry that morning. From that day forward, I vowed to never steal again. I worked harder, longer. I saved every penny. By 1982, I had enough to rent a space on the corner of 5th and Lilac, a tiny shop that sold candies, soda, aspirin, laundry soap, and prayer candles. Elena's Market. I painted the sign myself. Michael grew up stocking shelves, counting change, wiping counters after school while I fried empanadas in the back for extra cash. He told me once, when he was 13, that I embarrassed him. "No one else's mom smells like bleach and pork grease," he said. I smiled. "That's the smell of survival, mijo." When he turned 18, I emptied my savings to pay for his first semester at university. He never came back to the market after that. I did not blame him. The world I lived in smelled of toil and heat. His world was air-conditioned, bright, English-speaking, full of promises he believed he had earned by himself. I closed the market in 2001. By then, the neighborhood had changed, gentrified. What once was a dusty corner store became a trendy taco bar. They offered to buy the property for double its worth. I declined. Instead, I renovated the building into a home. My home. With the same foundation I had mopped and bled over for 3 decades. Michael married Vanessa the following year. She came from a family that smiled with their teeth but never hugged. Her skin was flawless, her words carefully selected. I baked her a welcome pie on the first night she visited our house. When his company succeeded, he bought a Tesla, flew to Italy, and sent me a postcard of Florence. On the back, in his tidy handwriting, he wrote, "Made it. From nothing to everything. Nothing." That word hit harder than the cuffs ever did. Years later, I watched a local interview with Michael, a news segment called From the Ground Up. He sat in a crisp navy suit, legs crossed, smile dazzling. "I built my life from scratch," he said. "No one helped me. I just hustled, did what I had to do." I sat in that same house, my old store, watching the television I had saved 2 months to buy. The room was quiet. The only sound was the dull hum of the refrigerator and the roaring silence inside me. He meant it. He truly believed he had done it all alone. The next morning, Vanessa told me not to talk to Ethan about poor people stories. They're traumatizing, she said. He doesn't need to know you were. Whatever it was you were. I was a mother, I said. She rolled her eyes. Sure, but that's not exactly a resume. From then on, I was instructed not to tell Ethan bedtime stories, not to bring up the past, and not to make the house smell like poverty food. They changed the curtains, repainted the walls, bought modern furniture, erased the color, the texture, the warmth, until it no longer looked like my house, but like something out of a catalog I could not afford. I had gone from owner to ornament, from mother to relic, from history to inconvenience. They did not ask me to leave. That would have been too honest. Instead, they made me invisible. They called it keeping the peace. I called it disappearing while still alive, and I was done. There is a special kind of cruelty that hides behind words like vibe and energy. A new form of erasure, soft and polished, wrapped in scented candles and inspirational quotes. Vanessa believed in high vibrational living. She said it often, like a prayer. No clutter, no chaos, no low-frequency energy. Apparently, I was all three. It started with the little things. She removed the rosary I had hung over the kitchen door and replaced it with a brass infinity sign that said, manifest. She threw away the garlic braid I kept near the stove and told me the smell was culturally limiting. Then, she rearranged the house. I used to keep a rocking chair in the living room, an old floral thing I had brought from the market days. One morning, it was gone. Where is my chair? I asked. Vanessa didn't even look up from her laptop. Oh, we donated it. It did not match the aesthetic. My chair, donated, like I was already dead. The dinner table had once fit 6. It was the only place where I ever truly felt seen. I used to serve Michael bowls of rice and lentils there, feed him spoons while doing math homework. But now, they replaced it with a sleek marble slab that sat only 4. You can eat earlier, if you like, Vanessa said. That way, we can keep the space clear when guests arrive. Clear, like a crime scene, like I was a stain. She set the table with white plates and wine glasses, hand-folded napkins, eucalyptus sprigs. No room for stories, no room for history, no room for me. At first, I still tried. I would sit on the side bench with a small plate, smiling at Ethan across the table while they discussed quarterly returns and plant-based diets. But soon, even that became a problem. Grandma keeps looking at me when I eat, Ethan said once. Vanessa smiled tight. She does that sometimes. Just eat, honey. I started eating in the laundry room. When guests came over, I was told to give them space. I would peek from the hallway, catching glimpses of clinking glasses and loud laughter. Occasionally, someone would notice me. Who's that? A woman asked once, sipping white wine. Vanessa smiled as if answering a trivia question. Oh, she lives here. Like an old roommate of Michael's mom. Old roommate. That night, I stood in front of the mirror in my room. I touched my face. I had lines, yes. But I still had a name. I was not just someone who lived here. I built this place. Scrubbed the tiles, laid the foundation, paid for the concrete with calloused hands. But now, I was a ghost. Polite, quiet, fading. Ethan was the only light left. He used to sneak into my room with questions. Grandma, how do you say moon in Spanish? Grandma, what's your favorite animal? Why do you always smell like cinnamon? I loved him more than life itself. But slowly, even he began to change. Why don't you ever smile anymore? He asked one day. I looked at him and felt my chest collapse. He was not being cruel. He was just observant. Because people stopped seeing me, I said. That night, Vanessa knocked on my door. Please don't put sad ideas in Ethan's head. He's very sensitive to energy. If you're going through something, maybe journal about it. Don't project. Project. I nodded, bit my tongue. But inside, something ancient began to stir. Then came the rule book, literally. Vanessa printed a 1-page family communication guide and slid it under my door. It read, please refrain from sharing traumatic or immigrant-based stories, bringing up religious beliefs at mealtimes, speaking Spanish in front of guests, can make others feel excluded, cooking with strong-smelling ingredients without asking, referring to yourself as abuela in front of Ethan's peers. At the bottom, in italic gold font, it said, "Let's build a home of peace, balance, and forward movement." I stared at the paper for a long time. They wanted peace. I gave them silence. They wanted balance. I gave them distance. They wanted forward movement. I gave them space. I no longer spoke at dinner. I no longer entered the kitchen without asking. I stopped hanging my laundry outside because Vanessa said it looked too third world. I bought candles that smelled like lavender instead of cinnamon, even though I hated them. One evening, I came downstairs to find Ethan crying quietly in the den. "Why are you crying, cariño?" I asked. He looked up. His nose was red. I told my friend, "You were my abuela." And he said, "What's that?" And I said, "It means grandma. But Mom said I should stop using that word at school." My hands trembled. "What word, mijo?" "Abuela." I sat down beside him, wrapped him in my arms. "That word," I whispered, "is sacred. But even sacred things, when not spoken, begin to vanish." By then, the house no longer felt like home. It felt like a hotel lobby. Everything white, neutral, lifeless, smiling faces, curated joy, endless performative positivity. There were no photos of me on the wall. Not one. Vanessa printed all their family photos in black and white, framed in matching silver. Her, Michael, Ethan at the Grand Canyon. Her, Michael, Ethan at Christmas. Her, Michael, Ethan at the new lake house. My history was not on brand, so I shrank. I became smaller in my movements, in my words, in my presence. But I was not gone. I was waiting, and I was remembering. The week before Christmas, I felt something shift. Not in the weather, Texas winter rarely bites, but in the way the house moved around me. There was a buzz, a kind of frantic, curated joy. Boxes arrived every day, table settings, fake snow spray, golden ribbons, imported crackers, name cards printed in cursive. Vanessa stood in the living room directing furniture like a stage play. "Minimalist winter luxe," she told the decorator. "No clutter, no chaos, no color." She glanced at my poinsettia plant, the one Ethan helped me pot, and frowned. It disappeared that evening. I stayed out of the way. I always did. But this time, I thought, maybe I could still offer something. Christmas, for me, was caldo de pollo, chicken broth, simmered for hours with corn, garlic, fresh cilantro, lime. It was what I made every year when Michael was young. He once called it magic soup, said it tasted like a warm hug. That morning, I woke early and began peeling garlic, chopping carrots. I had saved a small chicken in the freezer, enough for 6 bowls. I worked quietly, letting the broth speak in steam and memory. By noon, the scent filled the kitchen. Ethan ran in, eyes wide. "It smells like the old house," he cried. I smiled. "It is your father's favorite." Vanessa walked in just then, her phone in one hand, silk robe trailing behind her. She froze. "What is that smell?" she said. "Chicken soup," I answered. "For Christmas." She stared at the pot like it had insulted her ancestors. "We have a caterer, Elena," she said tightly. "Guests are arriving in 3 hours." "I know," I said. "This is just for the family." She walked over and lifted the lid. Steam rose. She wrinkled her nose. "Cilantro? Garlic? Elena, are you trying to turn this place into a soup kitchen?" Michael entered the kitchen, dressed in a navy sweater and slacks, adjusting his cufflinks. He saw the scene, the pot, me, hands damp, smile fading. "Mom," he said gently, "no offense, but that's not what we serve anymore." I looked at him. That child I once fed with the same ingredients now stared like I had brought shame to his marble countertops. Vanessa opened the cabinet under the sink, yanked out the trash can, and dragged it toward the stove. "Wait," I whispered, but it was too late. She dumped the entire pot into the sink. Soup splashed. The scent of hours lost filled the air. Ethan gasped. I did not move. Water, chicken, cilantro, gone. Vanessa tossed the pot in the dishwasher like it had insulted her. "We are not doing peasant nostalgia this year," she said flatly. Michael kissed her cheek. "I'll go check on the photographer," he said. The photographer. The guests arrived in black cars, women in silver dresses, and men in tailored blazers. Laughter echoed in the hallways as champagne flowed. Ethan wore a bow tie and shiny shoes. I had ironed that shirt myself. I went to my room, as expected. I changed into my best sweater, dark red, soft, hand-knitted. I held my earrings in my palm, the ones Michael gave me for my 60th. I waited until 6, then 5 more minutes, then 5 more. No one came to get me. I stepped into the hallway. The door to the staircase was locked, not just closed, locked. I turned the knob again, gently. No movement. I knocked once, twice, nothing. From downstairs, music drifted up. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. I heard clinking glasses, camera flashes, a pop of champagne, laughter. I stood there for a moment. Then I sat on the floor. I did not cry. I listened. I imagined the table, gold napkins, polished forks, a centerpiece of artificial snow, and white roses. The seat where I used to sit, empty, I assumed. At 8:12 p.m., the hallway went quiet. The door clicked. Someone had unlocked it. I stepped out. The dining room was spotless. No crumbs, no glasses, no trace, like nothing had happened. The photographer was packing up. He looked up at me, puzzled. "I didn't know you lived here," he said. I nodded. Neither did they. The next morning, I found Ethan in the kitchen, still in his pajamas. "Grandma," he said, "why didn't you come to Christmas?" I opened the fridge, took out eggs. "I was upstairs, Cariño." "But why?" I cracked the eggs into a bowl. "Because sometimes people forget who built the table they eat at." He tilted his head. "That's silly." I smiled. "Yes, it is." Later that day, I overheard Vanessa on the phone. "She didn't match the vibe," she said. "We wanted something elevated. She's not really part of this Christmas. Not this Christmas, not this family, not even this house, anymore." They had erased me from the photo, from the menu, from the table. But I was still here, and I had not forgotten anything. The day after Christmas, I made tea at dawn. The house was silent, still hung over on champagne and curated joy. The scent of rosemary from the centerpiece lingered faintly in the air, like a lie trying to perfume the truth. I sipped my tea in the laundry room, my usual sanctuary, and looked out the small window that faced the backyard. The old fig tree stood bare, its branches brittle, reaching upward like hands too tired to pray. Beyond it, at the far corner of the yard, was the shed. It had not been opened in years. They called it the junk barn. Vanessa once suggested tearing it down and putting in a yoga deck. I said nothing, just nodded. But inside that shed, buried under blankets and sealed boxes, was the version of me they had forgotten, before silence, before shame, before I became an invisible tenant in my own life. I waited until the afternoon, when they had gone to brunch with friends. Vanessa wore fur-lined boots she once said were ethically ambiguous. Michael barely looked at me as they left. Ethan waved. When the car pulled away, I stepped outside and crossed the yard. The shed door creaked open like a breath being held too long. Dust danced in the slanting light. I coughed once, then pushed aside a stack of old crates until I reached the back wall. Behind a false panel, hidden beneath 2 layers of wood, was a metal box. My name was still etched on top in black permanent marker, E.M. Morales, private. I carried it inside, locked the laundry room door, laid everything out on the table. Inside were a copy of the original deed to the house, signed in my name alone, the withdrawal slips from the $40,000 I gave Michael years ago, birth certificates, tax records, notarized documents of ownership, and finally, a small, dusty black device, the recorder. I had bought it 3 years ago after Vanessa said to me, "You twist words. It's hard to trust your memory at your age." Something about the way she smiled when she said it felt rehearsed, weaponized, so I started recording. Not always, not everything, just enough. I had hidden the device in a picture frame of me and Michael, back when he still called me Mama. It sat on the hallway table for years, right by the kitchen. It heard everything, every insult, every condescension, every denial. I plugged it into my old laptop and pressed play. Vanessa's voice spilled out, smooth and smug. She lowers the property's vibration. Honestly, I wish we could just put her somewhere. Like, a proper place. Michael's voice, flat. She has the deed, technically, but no one checks that. She probably forgot she owns it. Another clip. God, she cooked again. The whole place smells like a cantina. I cannot live like this. I don't want Ethan learning Spanish. He'll sound less refined. Clip after clip. Days, months, years of erasure recorded in perfect clarity. I sat in that room, listening. My hands trembled, but not from anger, from resolve. That evening, I wrote a letter. Dear Daniel, I hope this finds you well. It has been many years, but I believe you once told me I could call if ever I needed someone to remember who I really was. Well, I need someone to remember. I folded the letter, added a copy of the deed, and a USB with the recordings. The envelope was thick, but the truth often is. Daniel Whitmore had been a young attorney when I met him in 1997. His wife had stage 2 cancer, and he came into my market panicked, looking for medicine. I gave him the antibiotics from behind the counter and drove him to the clinic myself. He sent me a thank you note every year after that. The last one came 5 years ago. It said, "You saved more than a life that day. You reminded me what integrity looks like." I mailed the letter the next morning. 2 days later he called. "Elena?" His voice was deeper, older. "Still me," I said. There was a long pause. Then he laughed softly. "You know, I had a feeling one day you'd need to cash in that favor." "It's not a favor, Daniel," I said. "It's a reckoning." He grew quiet. Then he asked me to email him the full files, and if I still had the original deed. I did. He asked how long they had been living in the house. I told him. He whistled low. "This might be easier than I thought," he said. "Why?" "Because arrogance always leaves paperwork, and karma loves a loophole." The next morning, Daniel emailed me back with a plan. "Everything is legal, everything is provable, and best of all," he wrote, "it's time they remember who this house belongs to." I stared at those words for a long time. Not who lived here, not who stayed in a room, but who it belonged to. Me. Not because I needed power, but because I needed peace. And peace, my darling, sometimes comes with a lawyer. It is strange how justice begins. Quiet, methodical, and almost boring. Daniel did not speak like a man wielding vengeance. He spoke like a doctor reading an X-ray, calm, precise, with patience sharpened by time. He called me 2 days after I mailed the documents. "Elena," he said, "I reviewed the deed, the loan files, and the recordings. What you have is not just personal, it is powerful, and more importantly, it's enforceable." I let out a breath I had been holding for years. He continued, "Did you know Michael refinanced the house last year?" "No," I said. "I was never told. He used your property as collateral, took out a $600,000 line of credit under Morales Properties LLC. That alone is questionable, since the original deed is solely in your name." I blinked. "Can he do that?" "He did it through a joint living affidavit, claiming co-occupancy. But here's where it gets interesting. The bank approved it under one condition, that there be no pending disputes or ethical violations in the household. There's a clause." He paused and then read it aloud. "Any elder abuse, coercion, or discriminatory behavior toward dependent cohabitants may void the loan and trigger immediate recall of property rights." I sat there stunned. And the recordings? They prove more than abuse. They show long-term, calculated emotional cruelty. The kind that turns this into not just a civil matter, but a moral one. Daniel explained the process. We would file a grievance with the bank and a formal complaint with the Office for the Protection of Elderly Rights in Austin. The recordings, labeled and time-stamped, would be included as exhibits. A notarized letter from me would declare the history of ownership, the current living situation, and the psychological distress I had endured. "This will not be a lawsuit," Daniel said. "It will be a reckoning through systems they believed would always protect them." 2 days later, he submitted everything. I watched him scan the flash drive into an encrypted file. He named it Case, Elena, Truth. It felt like a burial, not of myself, but of who they thought I was. Vanessa once called me harmless, dull, passive. But she never looked in my eyes when she said it. The letter Daniel wrote on my behalf began with one line. I am the legal owner of 4529 Rosewood Avenue, and I have been systematically erased from my own life. It was forwarded to the bank's fraud department, and to a journalist Daniel knew, an editor for a digital publication on family rights. She read the file and asked, "May I call her?" I said yes. Her name was Claire. She sounded young, but sharp. "Miss Morales," she said, "this isn't just about a house. This is about dignity. Would you be open to sharing your story?" "I already am," I said, in my way. The next morning, the house was quiet. Vanessa was filming content in the sunroom, rearranging throw pillows and practicing lines. "Hey guys, today we're talking about generational energy, how to detox negativity from your home space." I passed behind her silently. By that evening, things began to crack. The first email came from the bank. Notice of reevaluation of loan terms, urgent response required. Michael read it in the kitchen, his face drained of color. Vanessa walked in, phone in hand. "What's wrong?" He shoved the screen at her. "The bank wants to review our occupancy affidavit. They're saying there's been a complaint." Vanessa's brows furrowed. "From who?" Then, her eyes met mine. I was stirring tea at the counter. Her mouth opened, closed. Michael paced. "They're threatening to void the loan. They mentioned elder mistreatment." What the hell is going on? I took a sip of tea. "Maybe," I said softly, "you should check who owns the house." The next day, a bank representative came to the door with 2 envelopes, one addressed to me, the other to Michael. Mine said, "To Miss Elena Morales, as the legal title holder of 4529 Rosewood Avenue, please be advised of your full reinstated control over all rights, assets, and access to the property effective immediately." Michael's letter was not so kind. "Due to material misrepresentation and ethical violations of contract, your occupancy agreement has been voided. Your financial line of credit is hereby suspended pending full review." Vanessa screamed when he read it out loud. She started crying, real tears, messy, uncurated. "You said this was ours," she shrieked. Michael stared at the paper like it was in another language. "How could she? How could you?" He turned to me. "You're 80, he said, like my age was a crime. 78, I corrected. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he whispered, "You planned this. All of it." I smiled for the first time in days. "No, mijo. I prepared for it. You gave me the reasons." That afternoon, Vanessa received a phone call, a reporter from the family rights outlet. The headline was already drafted. "Woman locked in room for Christmas retakes her home, legally." They wanted comment. Vanessa declined. But the story spread. By evening, Michael's company website crashed from traffic. 3 sponsors pulled their listings. The catering firm that did Christmas sent a refund with regret. Their credit cards stopped working. Their joint account was frozen. Even the Tesla app showed the vehicle was now under financial review. Vanessa cornered me in the hallway. "You destroyed everything," she hissed. "No," I said. "I simply reclaimed what you tried to steal quietly. I just did it with a paper trail." She slapped the wall beside me, not quite brave enough to touch me. I walked past her, calm, hands steady. Upstairs, I looked out the window as dusk settled. The house had never felt so still. They had taken my voice, but I had kept the pen. I always thought winter in Texas couldn't feel cold. But that week, the cold did not come from the weather. It came from the silence after disgrace. The article dropped on a Wednesday morning, 7:03 a.m. Claire had emailed me the final headline in advance: "Son evicts elderly mother for Christmas. Ends up homeless." The image that ran with it was of Michael and Vanessa leaving the house with suitcases, their faces blurred by motion but not enough to hide the shame. Behind them, in the background, was me, standing on the porch, hand resting on the railing, calm. The article exploded. By noon, it had over 300,000 shares. Comments poured in by the thousands. This made me sob. That woman is stronger than steel. Imagine betraying the hands that raised you. Justice was served cold, and I love it. She changed the locks, but what she really changed was her legacy. I did not read every comment. I did not need to. I had already lived them. The phone rang endlessly. Journalists, social workers, even local churches offering to host me for community speaking events. I declined them all. I wasn't interested in fame, I was interested in peace. But peace, it turns out, does not come easily when people are falling apart just outside your door. That Friday, there was a knock. I knew it was them. I didn't answer. 10 minutes passed. Another knock, louder this time. Then a voice, thin and desperate. "Elena, it's me. Please, open the door." I waited, then pulled back the curtain just enough to see. Vanessa stood on the porch, her makeup running, coat open to the wind, hair flattened by rain. Behind her, Michael was crouched, on his knees. I opened the door just slightly. The cold bit through the gap like breath from an old ghost. Michael looked up, eyes bloodshot, lips cracked, no cufflinks, no suit. Just a son who no longer had anywhere else to turn. "Mom," he croaked. "Please, we didn't mean it. We were just trying to build something better." I looked at him for a long time. Then at Vanessa, silent now, wringing her hands like a child caught stealing candy. I stepped outside, let the screen door swing behind me. "You built something, all right," I said. "A tower so tall you couldn't see the hands that gave you the bricks." Vanessa sniffled. We were overwhelmed. Ethan had school, Michael had work, I had to manage the house. "You had to manage me," I corrected. Michael shook his head. "I was just trying to protect the family." "From me?" I asked softly. He could not answer. I stared at my son, on his knees, in the cold, and I remembered every floor I had scrubbed to keep him warm. Every paycheck split to feed his mouth. Every silence swallowed so he could speak louder. I whispered, "I raised a man, not this." Then I turned back inside. I felt the moment his heart cracked, but it was not my job to glue it back together. Later that evening, I heard small footsteps on the porch. I opened the door again. Ethan stood there, eyes red, clutching a small teddy bear. "Grandma," he said through sobs, "I don't want to be mean. I don't want to forget you. I told Mom I want to come live with you." I knelt, wrapped him in my arms. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "But sometimes grown-ups forget who they used to be." He buried his face in my neck. "Remember how to treat people, baby," I whispered. "Even when others forget, especially then." He nodded. "Can I still call you abuela?" I smiled through tears. "Always." That night, I made caldo again. Not for a party, not for a crowd, just for me and Ethan, who stayed for dinner while his parents found a hotel. The soup simmered quietly, filling the house with warmth. Real warmth. He drew pictures on the kitchen table while I chopped cilantro. He handed me one, me, drawn with big eyes and a glowing heart. "That's your abuela power," he explained. I laughed. "That's a good power to have." The next week, Vanessa tried one more time. Through email, "Can we come back just until things settle? We'll stay out of your way." I forwarded it to Daniel. He replied to her directly. "Per the revised occupancy order, any return to the property must be granted by Miss Elena Morales. As of today, she has declined." She never responded again. Michael, I heard, had sold his Tesla to cover legal fees. His company's reputation was damaged beyond repair. One of his former clients reached out to me to say, "I never would have guessed he came from someone like you. You deserve better." I did. Vanessa lost her brand deals. Her blog was shut down for misleading family values. The last video she ever posted was one where she cried into the camera and said, "I'm a good person. I just got caught up in the image." I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in years, I didn't have to prove anything. The locks had changed, but so had I. I was no longer invisible. I was the woman who gave everything, and finally took something back. The house was never just wood and walls. It had held decades of breath, of grief, of hope. But after everything, I knew it was time to let it hold more than my story. So I gave it away. Not to the church, as they had once assumed. Not to Michael, not to anyone who had forgotten me. I gave it to those who remembered. The paperwork was finalized in spring. Daniel stood beside me as I signed it over to a nonprofit called For the Forgotten Elders. It was a small organization, mostly run by retired nurses and volunteers, dedicated to housing seniors who'd been abandoned by their families. No income, no next of kin, no problem, their mission said. You deserve a warm bed, even if the world went cold. When I handed them the deed, the director, a woman named Grace with silver hair and hands like my mother's, held it like it was sacred. You're not just giving us a building, she said. You're giving people somewhere to be remembered. That fall, construction crews arrived, not to tear down, but to revive. The shed out back was turned into a greenhouse, the laundry room into a small library. My old bedroom became a welcome suite for those who arrived in tears and silence. The marble dining table? Gone. In its place was an oak table built by hand, room for 12, maybe 14 if we squeeze. No name cards, no pretense. Just space. They let me help decorate. I chose warm yellows, soft blues, and painted every room with a different word. Resilience, mercy, shelter, truth. But the front gate held my favorite change. A bronze plaque, fixed just beneath the mailbox. Simple, clear. If they ever told you you don't belong, this door is always open. I stood there the morning it was installed, watched the man bolt it in, step back, nod. That night, the first resident moved in. Her name was June, 81, widowed. Her daughter had left her at a rest stop with nothing but a sweater and a plastic bag. When she arrived, she looked at the house like it was a trick. It's really free? She whispered. It's really home, I said. Each week, more arrived. A man who'd been couch surfing since his son sold their family home, a woman who hadn't been hugged in 4 years, a couple who lost everything to a reverse mortgage scam. They came broken. We built each other back. I began teaching a weekly class in the new kitchen, cooking with Grandma Elena, open to anyone, any age, no payment required. Our first recipe? Bread. Specifically, bolillo, the same kind Vanessa had thrown at me. But this time, we kneaded it with care. We laughed. A girl named Marisol asked why I tapped the dough twice before baking. To let it know it's loved, I said. We served it with butter and soup. We watched the kids eat like they hadn't in days. Some hadn't. It didn't erase what happened, but it redefined it. One afternoon, I felt a tug on my skirt. It was Ethan. He had a small backpack and 2 books. Mom said I could come every Saturday, he said. I knelt down. Every Saturday? He nodded. She said, you're safe now, she said. She was wrong. I held him close. Felt the small heartbeat I used to hear through his onesies. He looked up at me with those same eyes, Michael's eyes, but softer. I told my teacher, you're my real grandma, he said. I always was. He followed me inside. I let him choose the cookie recipe. We picked snickerdoodles. He spilled cinnamon all over the floor. I didn't mind. Later, he curled up on the couch in the library and read aloud to June, who had trouble seeing. She laughed at the funny parts. He paused to explain the big words. When he finished, she touched his hand. You read like an angel. He smiled. That's because Abuela taught me. It's a strange thing, how a house once filled with silence and shame could become a sanctuary. But I realized it was never about the walls. It was about the people we let through the door, and who we chose to keep out. Michael never returned. Vanessa moved to Arizona. I heard they started a new business, something involving crystals and personal branding. I wish them peace, but I do not wish them home. This house now belongs to the forgotten, to the dismissed, to those who were once seen as burdens, now treated as blessings. We don't have much, but we have stories. We don't wear matching sweaters, but we hold hands when the power goes out. We don't ask for perfection, just presence. On the first anniversary of the home's opening, we had a little party. No photographers, just friends. Ethan gave a speech. He stood on a chair, too big for his old bow tie now. This is my grandma's house, he said. And if you don't have a grandma, she can be yours too. Everyone clapped. I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I finally understood. I wasn't family anymore. But now, I'm everyone's grandmother.